The day my adopted son told me a nursing home is the best place for poor people like me, I smiled, paid for his cookies, and wrote down the name of his birth mother on the back of the receipt. My name is Kayla, I told my reflection, steadying my breath. I am 75 and I do not vanish. Jacob had come over that afternoon to talk about compensation. That was the exact word he used, like I stood behind some customer service counter for motherhood. You only told me I was adopted when I turned 30, he said, arms folded, chin up like he was keeping his face from falling into the old softness he used to have. Do you know what that did to me? It saved your childhood, I said quietly. Your father and I promised your birth mother we would wait until you were ready. She wanted you to have a clean start. He paced the kitchen. Well, the clean start was a lie. You should have told me sooner. Buy me a house, Mom. That would balance things. My hands didn't shake. Arthritis makes them stubborn, not weak. I don't have the money for a house. He laughed once, short and bitter. Then sell yours. Use what you can. And go to a nursing home. Those places are, you know, best for poor people like you. The sentence hung between us like a damp towel. Then he kissed the top of my head, habit more than affection, grabbed his keys, and left. The door latch clicked with the neat finality of a stapled envelope. I poured tea, watched that fine hairline crack travel the rim, and thought about the boy who learned to whistle before he could pronounce spaghetti, who hid in the linen closet during storms, who called my husband Dad before the ink dried. I thought about the promise I'd kept for 30 years, and the promise I had never made, that truth would buy anyone a house. The cup cooled in my hands. The house settled around me, old bones creaking in sympathy. Then I did what old women are not supposed to do. I began an investigation. The next morning, I pulled the cedar box from the top shelf of my closet, the one with letters bundled in faded ribbon, a hospital bracelet, a snapshot of a girl with a freckled nose who handed me her son without letting herself cry. Her name was written on a thin paper folded in fourths, the paper I'd tucked away after the adoption finalized. Nadine Harrow. There was also a county number, the name of a social worker who had retired 15 years ago, and a church bulletin from a town 3 hours west with a food pantry circled in blue pen. I called the county office. Records older than 20 years are archived, a young voice told me, bright and efficient. You'll have to come in person for anything that isn't digitized. I will, I said. Today. I left a note for Jacob on the kitchen table because motherhood is a muscle memory, meatloaf in the freezer. Call if you need anything. Mom. Then I packed a sandwich, a notebook, ibuprofen, and the courage you gather one button at a time when you're 75 and, as your son says, poor. My old sedan coughed once, twice, then agreed to be brave. By noon I was sitting in front of a woman with readers on a chain. We don't get many like you, she said, pushing the form back to me. Not that many people come for the hard pages. Hard pages are where the truth lives, I said. She smiled the way people do when they spot their younger self in someone else. Nadine Harrow, she read. There's a sealed file. You're the adoptive parent. I nodded. She checked a box, made 2 calls, and disappeared behind a door with a keypad. When she returned, she brought a thin folder that felt heavier than the desk. Inside, a hospital discharge sheet with wine spills on the corner, a police incident report with half the lines redacted, and a court note, minor removed for neglect, mother intoxicated, father unknown, maternal grandmother deceased, material environment unstable. Below that, placement recommended. Prospective adoptive parents, Kayla and Martin Ford. My husband's name looked like a window I could climb back through, one more Saturday morning with his laugh in the house. There were no fairy tale edges in the file. Just hard facts and the photo I already owned, copied on cheap paper, the same girl with the freckled nose, eyes watery, jaw set. In the margin, a social worker had written in neat blue letters, Nadine loves this baby. She loves him enough to let him be safe. I tucked the photo into my notebook and asked for anything not in the folder. There's an address once used for contact, the clerk said. Not current, but, well, sometimes the past doesn't move. She wrote down a trailer park name I'd never heard of and a lot number that made me think of raffle tickets. Then she squeezed my hand. Be careful, she said. People carry their storms with them. The sky turned a stubborn pewter as I drove. The trailer park had a name that promised shade, Willow Grove, but there wasn't a tree in sight, not one. The lots were gravel and sorrow. A dog barked without conviction. Two boys in hooded sweatshirts nudged each other and watched me over their shoulders. Lot 17 looked like it had been abandoned mid-breath. A screen door leaned open like a saloon. Wind had pinned down the welcome mat with bottle caps. On the porch was a milk crate full of mail, pizza coupons, final notices, a postcard with a beach on it and no writing. I knocked. Waited. Knocked again. A voice like sandpaper said, "It's open," and I stepped into a living room that had once been yellow. A woman sat on a couch that had lost a battle with a cigarette. She had the freckled nose from the snapshot, faded now into a map of years. "Nadine?" I asked. She squinted at me, blinked, then tipped her chin like a nod that forgot to finish. "Who's asking?" "I'm Kayla," I said. "I adopted your son." For a second, everything in the room held still. Even the dog outside lost his bark. Nadine's eyes filled with something that was not yet tears and not quite relief. She pressed a palm against her mouth and let out one of those soundless laughs that is half sob. "Is he okay?" she asked at last. "Does he smile? Is he angry?" "He should be angry. I'd be angry." "He smiles like sunrise," I said softly. "And yes, he is angry." She stared down at her hands. "I sobered up 9 years ago," she said, as if the sentence could grow legs and walk her across the room to me. "I help at the pantry now. I clean houses. I make casseroles for funerals." I know the final notices on the porch make that hard to believe, but the lights work and there's food in the fridge, and... "I believe you," I said. I did. There was a hardness to her that had been hammered into steadiness, the way a bent nail can hold more than you expect. She made tea in a chipped mug and served it to me like I was a guest in a palace. We talked about the night she let Jacob go. I could smell beer on my own breath, she said flatly, no melodrama, no excuses. I had $10 and a half tank. My mom was already gone. The man I thought would stay left his boots and disappeared in his socks. I knew love wasn't enough without clean sheets. We folded the past carefully between us, then she asked for my number. "I won't call him," she said quickly. "I don't want to make a mess of his life. But if you decide he should know I'm not a monster, let him know I volunteer Tuesdays." On my way home, a tractor trailer splashed grit onto my windshield, and for a second I couldn't see the road. I pulled onto the shoulder, wiped the glass with the sleeve of my cardigan, and looked at my face in the reflection. "This is not about a house," I told the woman in the windshield. "This is about a boy who thinks his history owes him an apology." When I walked into my kitchen, the note I'd left for Jacob sat exactly where I put it, untouched. My cracked teacup waited in the drying rack, the line a thin smile. I dialed his number. "Come for dinner," I said when he picked up. "I made meatloaf." He sighed. "Mom." "Come," I repeated. "There's something you need to know." He came. He always comes when I use that voice, the one I used for thunderstorms and stomach flu, and the time he broke his arm on the back fence because he thought he could fly. He sat, arms folded again. I set a plate in front of him, warm and honest. Then I put the thin folder on the table. "Before you ask for my house," I said, "ask for your name." He flipped the folder open as if expecting to find a gift card inside. He skimmed the first page, then slowed on the second, then stopped halfway through the third and went back to the beginning. The kitchen clock did its best to be polite, ticking softly as if it could tiptoe. "I kept these for you," I said. "For when you were ready." His jaw did something complicated. "You waited until I was 30, he said again, but the accusation had lost its teeth. "Why?" "Because what you needed at 5 was different from what you needed at 15. Because your father wanted you to have a childhood that didn't smell like courtrooms and paperwork. Because we promised the girl in that photo we'd help you build yourself forward before asking you to look back." He touched the copied picture with his fingertip as if the paper could bruise. "She's young." "She was," I said. "And she did the bravest thing I've seen a person do." He lifted his eyes to me. "Where is she?" "Lot 17, Willow Grove," I said. "She volunteers on Tuesdays." He laughed that same short, bitter laugh, but the bitterness was not aimed at me now. A trailer park, he said. Of course. That tracks. The park is just a place, I said. It's not a measure of someone's worth. He stared at the folder again, and for a moment I saw a 6-year-old who didn't like carrots, but ate them because I said they make you good at whistling. Why didn't you ever tell me his name? He asked, tapping the redacted lines on the police report. My father. Because it isn't there, I said. Because he left his boots and ran. Jacob looked at the ceiling, then down again, then past me to the window where my reflection watched us as if she were at the theater. I told you to sell your house, he said finally. And I told you a nursing home is best for poor people like you. Yes, I said. Silence stretched out between us like a sheet on laundry day. He folded it back carefully. I'm sorry, he said, but the words were soft and formal, the way you say sorry when you bump a stranger at the grocery store. Come with me tomorrow, I said. If you wanted to be different, go see where it started. He didn't agree. He didn't refuse. He took the folder with him and left my meatloaf untouched. At 2 a.m, I woke to the sound of my porch steps. When I opened the door, Jacob stood there holding the folder like a life preserver. I can't sleep, he said. If we go, can we go early? We left before the neighborhood woke, my sedan a small ship in a gray sea. He drove, hands at 10 and 2 like a teenager trying to impress an instructor. The map guided us, but the silence did most of the steering. You think she'll recognize me? He asked finally. She'll recognize herself, I said. That may be enough. The trailer park looked different in morning light, less like a verdict, more like a question no one had the right answer for yet. 2 men in neon vests were replacing a broken streetlight. A woman in a pink robe smoked on her steps and waved at us like we were a parade. Nadine opened the door before we knocked. Her eyes went from me to Jacob and stopped as if someone had taken away her legs. Oh, she said. Just that. Then, oh again, softer, like a prayer in a church with bad acoustics. Jacob didn't move forward. He didn't rush into a hug or ask for explanations. He just stood on the porch and said, "Hi," and you would have thought he'd given her a necklace. They sat on the couch. I took the chair with the Afghan draped on the back and tried not to count the cigarette burns. Nadine poured 3 glasses of water and set them on coasters that didn't match. Do you have questions? She asked Jacob, hands clasped tight as a tourniquet. I can answer some. Not all. I won't pretend I remember things I drank away. He took a breath big enough to lift his shoulders. Did you name me? Her mouth wobbled once. Teddy, she said. I called you Teddy because your hair stuck up like a little bear. I knew it wouldn't follow you, but I wanted you to have a name for me before you were yours. He nodded. Why didn't you keep me? She didn't look away. Because love is not food or heat or a locked door. I had love. I didn't have the rest. I thought if I pretended that love could do all the jobs, I would kill us both. He swallowed. Did you ever try to find me? She laughed with no bitterness at all, just the breathless truth. Every Tuesday, she said. I look at faces at the pantry and ask myself if yours would turn up one day for rice and canned peaches. Every time a young man trips in the parking lot, I wonder if his ankles turn the same way yours did when you were tiny. I learned to crochet because someone told me busy hands keep you from making phone calls you shouldn't. I made 17 scarves last winter. She gestured at the Afghan behind me. And 2 blankets. Jacob looked at the floor. The carpet was thin in a rectangle where a coffee table used to be. He traced the outline with his eyes like he could resurrect furniture with a stare. I asked my mom to buy me a house, he said, then flinched. I mean Kayla. I asked Kayla to buy me a house. Nadine pushed her water away. Do you want my opinion? She asked. Yes, he said, surprising all 3 of us. The world doesn't owe you a house because it took your last name, she said. Grief will tell you it does. Anger will agree. But the bill will come to someone else's table. Jacob nodded once, as if he'd been waiting to have his excuse taken from him. I'm sorry, he said, turning to me with a face that was more boy than man for the first time in years. I said a thing that doesn't fit in my mouth now. Bring it here, I said, patting my palm. We'll make room. We stayed until the light through the blinds braided itself into afternoon. Nadine told stories she could trust, the way his baby laugh caught on the last note like a hiccup, how he used to grab her keys by the lanyard and swing them, how she loved him and then loved him enough to love him from far away. Before we left, she pressed something into my hand, a photo of her at 20 with a tiny head under her chin. "He can have this if he wants," she said. "Or you keep it. I'll make do with Tuesdays." Jacob hugged her, not because the moment demanded it, but because he did. "Thank you," he said into her hair. "For what?" she asked. "For not pretending it was something it wasn't," he said. We drove home with the windows cracked a little. The spring air smelled like damp dirt and the first lie of summer. At my kitchen table, Jacob spread the papers out again and lined them up like puzzle pieces he finally knew what to do with. "I've been angry for so long," he said. "At a shape without a face. I poured it at you because you were closest." "I was built to take it," I said, then shook my head. "But I'm not a wall. I have a front door." He smiled without teeth. "I wanted you to buy me a house," he said, "because I thought the missing rooms in me could be filled with square footage." "What do you want now?" I asked. He put his hand flat on the table the way his father used to when he'd made a decision. "To fix what I can," he said. "Even if it isn't simple." "Most honest things aren't," I said. He rubbed his thumb along the photo's edge. "I said a nursing home is best for poor people like you," he said again, as if repetition could scrub it out of existence or set it permanently where it belongs. "I want to say something truer." "Then say it," I said. He looked up, eyes clear. "Home is where you are," he said. "And I am rich in that." Part 3, making room for the true story. The next day I made a list, because lists let your courage sit down and rest while you give your hands a job. 1. Call the bank. 2. Call the lawyer. 3. Call the church. The bank first. I met Helen there when we were both 30, trading recipes and interest rates. Now she wears hearing aids that gleam like earrings and an expression that says she knows every mistake you've ever made and plans to forgive most of them. "I want a living trust," I said, sitting across from her in the office where she keeps hard candy in a bowl shaped like a seashell. "The house stays in it. No one sells it for me. I choose who lives here with me and when the porch light turns off." Helen clicked her pen. "And who is your successor trustee?" "Myself, until I can't be." "Then a woman named Ruth from church who knows the difference between help and control." Helen's pen stopped mid-click. "And Jacob?" "He remains my son," I said. "But he doesn't inherit my roof. He inherits the right to sit beneath it without paying rent until grief, if it comes, lets go enough to let him stand without it." Helen smiled like a friend at a finish line. "Signed, sealed, recorded by Friday." She slid a peppermint toward me. I took 2. Then the lawyer, a woman with quick eyes named Garza, who had helped me after Martin died. "Boundaries," she said, jotting notes. "You don't owe anyone a deed to be considered family." "Please type that sentence somewhere I can put it on my refrigerator," I said. Finally, the church. Tuesday night the food pantry is a humming beehive. Nadine sorted canned vegetables with the impatience of someone who knows the exact weight of hunger. When she saw me, she wiped her hands and came over, eyes asking double the questions her mouth did. "Jacob's okay," I said. "He's more than okay. He's figuring out where to put his feet." She nodded in a rhythm that looked like prayer and labor at once. "That's all I ask." I used to ask for big things, a parade, a banner, an apology written across the sky. Now I ask for Tuesdays that don't hurt. "May I give you Wednesdays?" I asked. "I need help sorting my attic. There are baby clothes up there I've been ready to call nostalgia, but you know the difference between nostalgia and waste." She laughed, a clean sound that didn't rattle. "I'll bring labels. I've gotten very good at labels that don't lie." Back home, Jacob arrived with a box. "This is a start," he said, putting it on the dining table. Inside were 3 pairs of designer sneakers he didn't wear, a watch he could sell, a video game console, things bought to soothe an itch that turned out to be a splinter. "I'm getting a second job," he said. "Not forever. For now. I'll save. I'll build with what I earn, not what I can wrestle out of your hands." I considered telling him he didn't have to, but motherhood is not a coupon book. It's not even a savings bond. It's a scaffold you take down when the bricks can stand alone. "Take the blue thermos," I said instead. "It keeps coffee hot and regret cold." We put dates on the calendar. Saturdays. Jacob helps me recaulk windows and fix the back steps. Sundays, dinner at my table or his tiny apartment, meatloaf for him, stir-fry for me. Tuesdays, Nadine's pantry. Wednesdays, my attic with Nadine, labels and laughter, and a fan to send the dust back to its origins. 2 weeks into our new schedule, a letter arrived addressed in an unfamiliar hand. Inside was a certificate with a seal and the words, "Name change petition approved." Jacob had filed to add Teddy as his middle name. Not to erase the man he had been, but to carry the baby she had named across the bridge. He'd written a note. "Mom, I used to think identity was a bill someone else owed me. Now I think it's a meal you cook with what you have and share with the people who don't run. Thank you for not running. Love, Jacob, Teddy." I pressed the paper flat with my palm. The house hummed around me, refrigerator, window fan, a leaf tapping the glass like a polite neighbor. The real test came the following month when Jacob's friend showed him a listing, 2 bedrooms, a small yard, the kind of place you buy when you're 29 and still believe in birthday candles and patios. He came to me with the printout, eyes bright. "What do you think?" "I think you should run your numbers," I said. "Not your mouth." He grinned. "Already did." "I can't afford it." "Not yet. 6 months, maybe 8 if I'm honest." "Then be honest," I said. "I'll help you paint when the time comes. I'm an expert at corners." He folded the paper, then unfolded it, then folded it again like a little prayer. "I want to show Nadine," he said. "Not to ask for anything. Just to say, look what happens when you make a hard choice and someone keeps it." We brought the printout to Willow Grove. Nadine held it like it was a diploma. "It has a porch," she said, tracing the photo with her finger. "You can air out your rugs and your anger." He laughed, and it was the sound that belongs in summer. She hugged him quick and fierce. "I can help you pack when it's time," she said. "I'm good at letting go." I learned the hard way. On the drive home, Jacob turned the radio down. When I said those words, the nursing home ones, I thought I was powerful. I thought I could push you into a corner and the corner would spit out cash. You didn't yell. You didn't cry. You just moved. I moved toward the middle of the truth, I said. "The corners are dusty." He took my hand at the stoplight, gave it one squeeze like a boy crossing a street. "I'm sorry," he said again, but this time the words weren't soft and formal. They were heavy and useful like a hammer. "Apology accepted," I said. "Now build with it." The next Sunday, he brought groceries without making a show of it: onions, potatoes, a family pack of chicken, a jar of good olives. "For the house," he said, and I let the sentence be small and enormous at once. We ate on the porch while the neighborhood light softened. Birds argued about nothing. Somewhere a child was learning to whistle. We didn't talk about money that night. We talked about the sound a new screen door makes, the best way to keep Basil from sulking, the time he thought the moon followed our car and sobbed because he didn't want it to get tired. We talked about what real wealth means, anyone to call at 2 a.m., a pot that isn't empty, a door that opens when you don't knock right away. Later, when the dishes were done and he had gone home to his apartment that fits him for now, I washed my cracked teacup again, careful like it was the last one on earth. The line was still there, thin and honest. I ran my finger along it and felt no panic at all. Some things break where nobody can see. Some break right where you hold them every day. And some don't break, they just show you the seam you keep pretending isn't there so you can decide whether to mend it or throw the thing away. I dried the cup and set it on the rack where morning could find it. Then I stood by the window and watched my own porch light glow like an apology that learned how to be a promise. The next Tuesday at the pantry, Nadine called me over to the bulletin board. Someone had posted a notice: "Need volunteers for Saturday, painting a transitional house for women leaving treatment." I read it twice. "You ever painted with a group?" she asked. "I've painted alone for most of my life," I said. "I think it's time to share the wall." On Saturday, Jacob came, too, hat on backward, cheeks pink with work. He rolled paint with the concentration of a person who finally understands the difference between covering and erasing. Nadine cut in the edges with a hand that only shook when the ladder wobbled. I stood on the tarp and listened to them talk across a white room that used to be the color of old regret. "Mom," Jacob called when we were almost done, holding up his roller, freckles of paint on his forearms. You missed a spot. I looked where he pointed. It was small, easy to ignore. I dipped my brush, reached up, and covered it in one clean stroke. There, I said. Better. On the drive back, he turned to me at a red light. I don't want your house, he said. I want your company. That, I told him, I can afford. We passed a nursing home on the corner, brick, tidy hedges, bingo sign in the window, and I didn't feel the old flinch. I felt something else, relief wide enough to park in. It's not a bad place. It's not a threat. It's a building where strangers become neighbors, where the staff sets the tables and the sun visits at the same hour. If I ever choose it, it will be my choice. Not a sentence. Not a shortcut for anyone's guilt. That night, with my feet up and a book open to a page I wasn't reading, my phone buzzed. A photo from Jacob. The listing again, but this time with a note typed across it, 8 months, Mom. Not because you owe me. Because I owe me. Proud of you, I wrote back. I'll bring the blue tape. He sent a heart. Not the red one people fling around like confetti. The plain one, black outline, simple, exact. I went to the kitchen, put the kettle on, and set out 2 cups. Mine with the hairline crack. One of Martin's old mugs for the boy who isn't a boy anymore. I poured the water and watched the steam cloud the window. It cleared, and the backyard came back into view. Hostas I need to divide. A clothesline I still use when summer behaves. The fence where Jacob broke his arm. The moon rose and tagged along like it did when he was little. It didn't look tired at all. I lifted my cup, set it down, and smiled at the seam glinting in the porch light. It didn't make the cup weaker. It made it mine. And as long as it holds tea and history and the kind of silence you can breathe in, I'll use it. In the morning, I'll call the paint store and see if they still carry the color Martin liked for front doors, something between pine and hope. I'll ask Jacob if he's free Saturday. If he is, we'll paint until our arms ache and the mailbox looks like it belongs to a house that knows what it's for. If he isn't, I'll paint alone for a while, then call Nadine and ask her to bring labels for the boxes that still need naming. We'll eat sandwiches on the steps. We'll count the small riches, a porch light, a second chance that took the long way home, a sentence that once broke a teacup and then taught us where to mend.
Your watch to the end. Be click here. You will hear another story from my grandma.